Hi, everybody. It's Patrick Escolas with another Banyan Technology Tire Track podcast. Today, I have with me John Vigliarolo from Nolan Cunnings, and I'm very happy to have you here, John. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Hey, and I do want to say right off the get-go, I love your mustache. I am a facial hair aficionado, and I believe it's where all the authority comes from, correct?
It is. Most of my power is derived from my mustache. I think that's a line from Super Troopers.
That is, I'm so glad you got that because that's exactly what I thought of. My dad was military man and he had the military stash forever.
Yeah.
And he was all bald and just that. He only cut it when my brother and I started growing ours. I think he was intimidated. He was like, who needs a mustache anyways? We're like, you're just scared that ours is better now.
Yeah, there you go.
He never admitted to that, so we'll leave that off the record. No, but John, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a minute since I got to record one of these. They finally let me out of the 2024 cage, apparently. So
there you go.
That's right. So first, and I always like to start introduction, and this can be first off, who are you and who's Nolan and why is he so cunning?
Yeah. So I'm John Vigliarolo. Like we talked about, I'm the president and CEO here at Nolan Cunnings. Been with the company for almost 33 years. Have been running the day-to-day operations of the business for about 15. And Nolan Cunnings has actually been around since 1920. So we're a 104-year-old organization.
Damn.
And Ollie Cunnings actually was kind of the backbone of NNC from its founding in 1920 until around World War II, maybe a little after World War II.
Okay.
Nolan, he was a lawyer by trade. So we kind of lose track of him after the first couple of years of the existence of the company. So we don't really know what happened to him. We just think he went back to practicing law. But
he just got his name attached to it and then walked away. He's like, exactly. I've done my job here. No.
Yeah. So the original application of Nolan and Cunnings was we serviced as a clearinghouse for loss and damage and spoilage claims for the growers of fresh fruits and vegetables. That were coming in from California and Florida, in the early 20s and 30s. And
I can imagine there had to be a lot of spoilage and claims because reefer trucks didn't in any way exist.
No, absolutely not. So that was kind of how we cut our teeth. And in the mid 1950s, Mr. Nicholas Jarvis bought the name and the assets of Nolan Cunnings from Ollie Cunnings because back in that point in time, right, we didn't have PCs, we didn't have Zarlight, we didn't have any of that stuff. So really the value was in the tariff files that had been accumulated. Or Mr. Jarvis introduced what he claimed was the first freight bill payment plan in the country, right?
Was the tariff at that point, was there just a book of it, kind of like a ledger would look like? Yeah.
Yeah. When I started here 33 years ago, right, we still had a room full of paper tariffs. And every once in a while, we had to go back and pull one of those out if we needed.
Where did that pricing come from? Hold on. Go back to the Indiana Jones warehouse.
Well, that was it, right? It's like going down to the catacombs to look for these old tariffs, but every once in a while we still needed them. And obviously like everybody else, through automation and technology, we've been able to grow by leaps and bounds to where we are today. So, we're a global freight bill audit payment logistics consulting company helping shippers of all sizes look at what they're spending, who they're spending it with, and are they spending it properly, and making sure that all of those things are happening and transacting the way that they're supposed to.
Right, which we know happens all the time, and you guys barely touch anything because it's always exactly what you're supposed to be billed for, and nothing ever changes. Right? No, freight bill is such an easy thing.
Once you call the carrier, everything just happens, exactly the way that you want it to, with no changes or no variations or anything along that line. So
the poor carriers. Whenever I talk to someone, I always end up giving them a bad. But it's okay. We all need we need them. So
exactly.
They're not
we
going
love
anywhere.
The carriers. We love the carriers.
They're like family. You love them, and sometimes you're upset with them, but you're still going to talk to them. Yeah, you still talk to them tomorrow.
Yeah, but and it's look, a lot of it is automation on the carrier side too, and a lot of things that the carriers have done to try to streamline their operation and make it more efficiently, unfortunately doesn't always translate to clean billing practices, right?
Right.
So we find every year, 3 to 5% year over year is our average for every single one of our customers, that we find in cost avoidance for them. I don't like to say savings, right?
Right.
But in cost avoidance, and that does come from, audit savings of misapplied rates and things along that line, but also, and it's something that we're going to talk about as we get in here a little bit further, but the duplicates and the way that we see them and the different methods that we see the duplicates coming in from the carriers and the forwarders and the brokers, it's just getting worse. It's not getting better with technology. So
I can't wait till we get to that aspect, because that is something, as I'm an account manager, I get to see some of those client issues and the tickets, and I see duplicate come up a lot. So I was wondering if that, like we were talked about, is it just like we thought? Life seems to be going a lot faster now than it was 6 months ago, but it sounds like there's actually a trend that's supporting me seeing that email topic. Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
But before we go there, I did want to kind of start it. So I know that we have an agenda, and that's why what we're going to talk about a little bit ahead of time. You sneaker. But we've got on here the power of rate benchmarking. And so to me, as working with a TMS and live API, I know a lot about rating, getting live rates from carriers and 3PLs. What's rate benchmarking? What does that mean?
So what rate benchmarking does, and what we do for our customers, and what we have that we've brought to the market now, is that, as most people in our industry know, the pendulum on pricing tends to go back and forth every couple of years, right? From it being a carrier's market to a shipper's market. It very rarely sits in the middle where everybody feels like they're being treated fairly. So, and
we'd have nothing to argue and complain about.
Exactly, right? But especially coming out of the pandemic, right, where we saw capacity shrink in the marketplace, we saw the ability to have drivers and to get your freight from A to B and to have people be able to work during that period. It swung the pendulum to the carrier side of things. So we saw across our customer base, 10, 15, 20% increases in some cases from the carriers, and the shippers just had to take it because they needed to still get their freight from A to B. And then let's not even talk about ocean freight and what happened in that vertical during the pandemic.
Yeah, please no.
Yeah. So what we do, and we've got about an $8 or $9 billion repository of data that we utilize for this process, is that we can take truckload, parcel, and LTL. And what we can do is we can look at it and we can run it through our models, and we can tell our customers, hey, your freight's performing under market, which is great. Keep your mouth closed and keep going. Your at market rates, which maybe we can do a little bit of digging and see if there are, different areas or different regions or territories that maybe could do a more targeted renegotiation. Or if you're performing over market, then we're going to come back and we're going to say, okay, you guys are paying too much. And we do that by looking at every shipment, every lane, shippers of comparable sizes. So we're not going to take a shipper that's got a $2 million freight spend and compare them against a shipper with a $250 million freight spend, right? So we try to, what we do in our benchmarking exercises, we try to line them up with a shipper that spends about the same that they do. And even we try to get, and we're doing more and more industry specific. So, I'm based out of Detroit. So I have a lot of automotive business. So
in Detroit? No, that's crazy. Yeah. While you're talking Detroit, you've got the Michigan helmet up there. I can't be too happy about it, but luckily it's a rivalry again. So
that's right.
The Buckeye in me is happy to see there's someone worth playing. But no,
right above that is my Lions helmet. You just can't see it in the Zoom frame. So
I respect that. I'm a Browns fan. We know how you guys were a great story. I rooted for you because we all know what it takes to get that pro team out of the trenches.
Yeah.
But talking about that industry specific, because that's got to be key, because how you're moving freight, if your freight's ugly, what you need as far as an equipment type is going to be more in line with what you're seeing from an industry that you're working in, even more so than a volume that you're playing with compared to other players.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And like you said, you're not going to take somebody that's shipping, foodstuffs, right, and think that they're going to be playing on the same plane as somebody that's moving big, heavy, bulky,
Sure.
auto parts or chassis parts or dies,
Hmm.
things along that line. So once again, we've gotten more and more sophisticated with how we're modeling out our benchmarking exercises to try, whenever possible to kind of go along in the industry standards or the standard industry to make sure that everybody's, if we say, hey, you're overpaying, we want to be able to deliver those results in the back
Right.
end and not say that, every $20 million shipper is going to be entitled to the same type of pricing.
No, and that brings up another good point. Now, is that something that you guys include within your case study or value add of that 3%, or is this ROI on top of
No,
that?
this is ROI on top of it, right?
Okay.
So the 3 to 5% that we talked about earlier is strictly in the freight bill audit.
Yep. Just
Vertical.
matching
Yeah,
quoted to audit and getting in the mix there. Right.
yeah, absolutely. Yep, yep. So
And then with that, is that something that you and the Nolan Cunnings team then go in and help with that carrier negotiation, or you're saying, hey, here's all the data, go talk to this carrier and tell them you want to pay less, or don't ever talk to them because clearly something's going right, just accept the pizza lunch he brings every other month and smile.
yeah, so we kind of what's kind of unique about the way that we have positioned ourselves is that everything's kind of a la carte, right? We kind of
Okay.
have our 5 pillars of services that we provide, and then the customer has the option to use all of them or select which ones they want to use. So usually after we go through a benchmarking exercise, if we determine that there's opportunity there for the customer, as we're reviewing the results with them, we'll tell them, hey, Mr. Shipper, now that we've done this, we have the tools, the resources, and the knowledge of the market to help you secure better pricing.
Okay.
So we can help you, optimize your freight, supplement your carrier selections, because that's one of the other things that we're going to do is we're going to see, are you weak in a region with a carrier? Are you opening a new DC? Do you need a new line haul carrier or whatever the case?
So you're going to help diversify the pool as well.
Exactly. If they want that, right? Some of
Right.
them like, you know what? Nope, we want to use 5 carriers. I don't care about using any more carriers. But other ones we're going to say, you're going to be better served
Mhm.
to diversify your carrier base some, look at it more as a super regional basis as opposed to just a national basis. And then you get into, if you're on the truckload side of things, do you want to include only asset-based carriers? Do you like using brokers? And then it's, then you just kind of build it out from there. So we do give the customer, that option of taking them after the benchmarking exercise is done. We can give them the data, review the data with them,
Mhm.
and then let them take it and do the negotiation on their own. Or we could say, okay, let's continue to work together on this, and we can help you secure that pricing. And then when we do that, right, I don't want to own the pricing. I'm not a 3PL. So anything that we do in that regard, any pricing that we negotiate, any rate sheets that we get executed on behalf of our customers, that's theirs. They own it. They own the relationships. We want them to know that those carriers, those terminals, those reps. So we're just kind of the facilitator.
No, that's great, and it sounds like a great way to make sure your clients are happy and get sticky with you as they use as many of those, as you said, the 5 pillars as they may want, and in a way that they want to do it. Because I don't know if you've met anybody in freight or shipping, but everybody's pretty. I don't want to say stubborn, but I'll say stubborn. But because hey, most of the people you work with have been doing it for 30 plus years, and like I know what works, But that kind of brings us to the next point here. Talking about the carrier RFP support, is that just kind of go hand in hand with the benchmarking and negotiating that way, or is this a completely just another one of the pillars?
Yeah, so no, it is that is kind of the second pillar of what we do, right?
Okay.
Is so that we look at what they're doing, how they're doing it, what they're spending, determine, where that spend is to the market. And then the second pillar is going to be, hey, let's get better pricing because now we know that we're overpaying here. So let's get some better pricing, and get you more in line, at or below market cost.
Yeah, and are you seeing that? Maybe the organizations that you're talking to are large enough that it'll always be that, but are people still going through the standard formal RFP process, or is that changing at all?
That's changed a bit. One of the things that technology has given all of us is the ability to be much more targeted. So if you have ADC or a territory that may be underperforming, You can do very targeted RFPs. Some customers still choose to do full-blown RFPs, and it really is going to depend on what the results of that benchmarking exercise are to determine, do we need to do a full-blown RFP? Do we need to do an LTL RFP? Do we need to do a truckload RFP? Do we need to do both? And then what's going on with your small parcel spend all in the same time, and how's that operating, and what's your service utilization like, and things along that line. So it's really, the results of the benchmarking exercise typically take us down the path to what type of RFP are we looking at doing.
And you just kind of mentioned, so you're playing in LTL, truckload, and parcel space. Are there any other modes that you guys are touching as well, or basically anybody's got a bill for?
Yeah, well, and as far as the RFP and the benchmarking process, that's kind of where we draw the line. The ocean freight is just such a different animal. Expedited air freight is just such a different animal that we, at least to this point, haven't developed the tools enough to be able to appropriately benchmark and help our customers bid that stuff out. So there are companies out there that do that. We haven't found one to partner with on that because, look, I'm a big believer, and much that's why we have the relationship that we do with Banyan, is that I know I'm not going to be an expert in everything, right? So that I think part of being a good leader and a good manager on your business is knowing areas that you're weak in and finding people with skill sets to complement those weaknesses, and that's how I position us. And I'm not going to be an expert in everything, but you know what? I'm going to find you somebody that we can work with that can complement what we're doing to give you that best service that you can get.
And see, I love that outlook. I've always been I know a guy kind of person.
Yeah.
I know what I know what I don't know. And like you said, I'm extremely intelligent because I know all the places I'm weak. And no, but within that, yeah, I think that's a great model to have. If you overextend and be the master of all, then you tend to lose sight of those things you were really doing well, trying to over encompass everything. So no, and then you mentioned, hey, our name, Banyan. We were kind of talking the technology. Obviously, with what you guys are doing at the level you're doing, technology's got to be a big part in it. How is the role of transportation management systems, Banyan or not, been coming into play there?
Yeah, so it's huge, right? And that's actually one of the biggest pushes that we're making, both within our existing client base for organic growth, as well as what we're taking to market, right? So now we're talking about that third pillar of what NNC does, and that's the technology piece of it, right? So we've now looked at the rates, right? We know that the rates are too high. We've done the RFP. We now got this new pricing. Well, then let's get to the technology side of things and TMS, and let's make sure that you're making the right decisions, informed decisions, so that you're picking the right carrier, the right mode, the right service. And then, here I didn't get to number 4 till I got the cost, right? So, so technology plays a key role. So we work with our customers to integrate them into TMS now that we've done these first 2 steps to then give them a tool to better manage, better execute, give them better visibility of what they're doing on making their sourcing decisions on a load by load basis. So technology is huge.
And within that, just from my perspective, one thing that I have seen within the past 6 months as a major, I don't know about change, but a ramp up, more and more integrations from TMSs into other systems, whether that's ERP systems, warehouse management. Like, are you seeing that as well? Are you being asked to play and take a look at all of that?
Absolutely, yeah. So a lot of what we're looking at is bidirectional integrations between ERP systems and TMS systems, our freight audit platform, whatever the case may be. And then on the back end of that, after the transactions are either shipped and costed or audited and completed, feeding data back into those ERP systems, because then you get into the data and reporting aspects of it, right? So that everybody needs to see that visibility. Some use our tools, some like us to feedback for their tools. Other customers, and I'm working on a project for a client right now that they're wanting to use freight audit data to help calculate, cost of goods sold, freight as a percentage of sales, and things along that line. So we're feeding back into their ERP. We're building out some specialized reporting for them so that they can see that on a transaction level, on a customer level, on a divisional level, to see how, okay, we budgeted X, we paid Y, Let's see if we're over, how we're forecasting.
And that makes a lot of sense because, even looking at a TMS, and if you weren't doing, part of what you guys are doing with the freight audit, that quoted data is only half the battle. It isn't going to be that true sense of actual cost. So in order to have an ERP or WMS or your dashboards be accurate and do that breakdown, you've got to have that end all be all cost after the dispute, after the variance is talked, and what you actually paid. So that makes a lot of sense. And I can see how important that would be to the data you're getting in and out of that. So within that, and we've got this, you're doing the audit piece. And first off, I got a question here. Do carriers hate when they know that a shipper has gotten involved with Nolan Cunnings because now they're going to deal with all of this? Or is this something where they're just like, oh no, we know those guys. They keep us on the straight and narrow? Or what does that relationship look like? Because you're the IRS to some, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it can be contentious, right? I'm not gonna lie. But we try to view the carriers as a partner, right?
Okay.
We all want the same thing, right? We all want the load to get from point A to point B on time and to pay for that load, right?
The fair price, whatever that may be.
For that load, right? But our piece of that is making sure that the customer's only paying what they agreed to pay, right? And this is where we kind of take that integration even a bit further. And for the customers that we have that utilize TMS, we integrate the TMS into the freight audit platform, and we get a feedback into our system every day of the loads that shipped the prior day with, who the carrier was, obviously the origin destination information was, estimated costs, things along that line. So then as the transactions come in from the freight carriers, whether it's an EDI, an XML, or an actual freight bill, one of the first things that we do is we validate that that's a good shipment, that's their bill of lading, that's the right carrier. And then we do the first audit step that we do from a dollars and cents perspective is quoted versus billed, right?
That's the easiest, right? You got one number versus another number.
Yeah. Exactly. If that matches, great. But then we still pass that off to the audit engine at that point in time, because look, mistakes are still made. People are still the ones responsible for inputting the pricing into the carrier's rate engine that they're using to create their invoices. So we don't depend strictly on the estimated cost coming in from TMS. We still load the contracts into our rate engine, and we do a rate audit of every charge on every freight bill for two things during our process. First thing that we're doing is, did the shipper request the services that are being billed for by the carrier, right?
Okay.
Did they need a lift gate? Did they need inside delivery? Did they need, whatever, on and on and on, right? Did they need time definite delivery, things along that line?
All the buttons and
all the hot buttons, right? Exactly. So the first thing that we do is we go through, we look at the transaction, we look at the paperwork, we look at TMS if we need to see what pre-tender accessorials were requested to make sure that the carrier is only billing for the charges that they've asked for, right? After that, then we go to the dollars and cents audit, where we make sure that from the contract, from the rate sheet,
was that accurate in the first place?
It was that accurate in the first place, right? And then what we do is we try to collaborate, right? So if there's discrepancies, if it's a recurring discrepancy, right? Maybe it was a crappy copy of the bill of lading, so the carrier's OCR didn't read it right and create a bad invoice.
Fine, blame it on the OCR, John.
Yeah, we use a ton of OCR, so I can't I can't throw too many stones at it. But if it's a recurring thing, we try to call that out. We try to maintain good relationships with the pricing people at the carrier side, as well as the receivables people, so that we can let them know if we're seeing a pattern, right? So
hey, is this one user not hitting liftgate every time they need liftgate, or is there a disagreement on what's a limited access and what isn't? Okay, that makes sense to me. Now, I heard something this past week, and I'll ask you and see what you say. With all this disputes and freight bills, how far back could a carrier go and say, hey, no, there's a billing discrepancy here? Because there's got to be, and what do you guys do within that? What's the statute of limitations on a freight bill?
Yeah, statute of limitations is one thing. Relationships is something different, right?
Okay.
And what we try to do, right, is we always try to mediate those types of situations where, look, if this is a longstanding carrier and the driver had a bill of lading slide under his seat, or something like that, and 6 or 8 months later it comes back, and they invoice it. Yeah, if it's several years later, that's a problem. But from well,
Well, I was just saying, I want to know what's the longest time that you've had to be like, wait, what is this from?
Yeah, no, unfortunately, we still see some of that. That we've got some bills currently that are actually about 4 years old that we're still trying to reconcile for one of our customers, and it's the shipper is like, well, no, I'm not going to pay these. We're like, well, look, we've got this paperwork saying that they've performed these services for you. I know your books are closed, but
and I think. And that's where the technology helps out, because then you could always get the archival data versus if you're pen and paper, what notebook, what catacombs from the 1950s tariffs do you have to go find that in, right?
Well, that's another advantage to having a TMS, right? And we encourage all of our customers to utilize a TMS because then you have that system of record. So another thing that we do as part of our audit process is that we utilize match pay, right? So we're matching the shipping data coming in out of TMS with the freight bill data as it comes in, closing those transactions. So then at month end, we're able to help them create very accurate freight accruals showing, okay, here are your open shipments that we haven't seen invoices for yet with the estimated costs from TMS, so that now you have an accurate freight accrual to book, number one. And number two, it gives us visibility on what invoices do we have outstanding, how old are those invoices that are outstanding, because then we can start chasing the carriers. Hey, we've got these ladings that we tendered to you 3 months ago that we haven't seen freight bills for yet.
And we know we got to expect they're coming, and we can't be like, no, we closed it. They didn't bill us. It must have been free, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's another advantage to having a TMS, is having visibility on open liabilities that you haven't been billed for yet.
No, that's awesome. And so with all of this, we get that, as you talked about, we get the data in, the data out, whether it's in an ERP, whether it's in a report, and whether you're using that to go talk to your carrier about different rates. What does Nolan Cunnings bring to the report game? And then I guess another question would be, with all of this data that you're seeing and the trends that you're trying to match up to shippers of industry, what kind of trends are you seeing, whether that be unofficial or what's happening in the world today of shipping?
Yeah. So it is all about data, right? I mean, you guys know that, we know that, we collect between 80 and 120 different data elements from every freight bill that passes through our system. So we take that data and we've created an entire set of BI reports that is in a constant state of change and turnover, as we receive feedback from our customers. Well, hey, this would be nice if it could do this. Hey, it would be nice if we could see it like this. So we take and we've created kind of our BI with that in mind, with customizable filters, based on mode or carrier or location or division or whatever the case may be, so that they can take and look at who they're spending their dollars with, what they're being spent on. Accessorial charges are and you ask what trend that we're seeing, and that's one of the biggest trends that we see, is that I have never in my 33 years of doing this seen more accessorials getting billed by carriers than I'm seeing today.
And these are these accessorials that aren't selected within the quoting process?
Well, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, not as many of our customers are using TMS as we would like. So we don't know, other than what's on the paperwork, what's being requested or what's being billed for. But we're, we love our carrier friends. We've said that, right?
We do.
But in a lot of cases, what we've heard is that these terminal managers are incentivized to assess accessorial charges at the terminal level because it helps their margins. So we're seeing more and more accessorial charges being assessed, a lot of reways and things along that line, and just the sheer number of accessorial charges that we see is incredible. No, look, if they're legitimate, right? And I've got no issue with that. But like I said, it's just something that we've seen more and more of going on and on.
And does that increase the time of, closing a dispute because there's so many more and there's a backlog of it? What has that done for the process on the back end?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit of both, right? Okay. So, it depends on how much we can validate. And then what we do is, once again, when we see trends, we try to be very proactive with our customers about, hey, we're seeing this happening a lot on this carrier out of this location. Do you guys have something going on? When was the last time you had your scale certified? And we try to do things to help mitigate those
control all the variables you actually have control over. Yeah,
exactly. So we're seeing a lot of that. But it's really getting the data in a usable format, a user-friendly format. And it's also helping scorecard the carriers too, right? So it's helping, here are your carriers, here's your spend, here's the number of bills that they're sending in that we're having to make audit adjustments on, here's the value of those audit adjustments, and then the duplicates, right? Here's how many duplicates we're seeing in the value of those duplicates, right? And I know that was something we wanted to come back to, and I don't know if we want to kind of segue.
I think that. I was just say right now, this is the time, John.
Yeah. So the carriers and the way that they're billing is different now than, like I said, any time that I've seen it in my career. And it used to be, right, that if a carrier created an invoice, they sent it into you, and they determined that there was a post-tender accessorial that they didn't include or something along that line, you'd get a new freight bill with the same invoice number that would say corrected bill, whatever the case may be. And sometimes it would include all of the original charges and what they billed. Sometimes it would just bill or include the charge that wasn't assessed originally.
Mm-hmm.
And it was easy to reconcile that this was another copy of an invoice that we've already seen.
Sure, you can match it up to something within there and put it against it. Yeah.
Unfortunately, what we're seeing now is that the carriers are, for whatever reason, when they realize that there's charges that haven't been paid, we're getting an entirely new invoice with a new invoice number that doesn't always reference that original freight bill.
So we got ghost shipments we're getting billed for.
Well, exactly. So what we're seeing, unfortunately, it happens a lot with freight forwarders. And what, unfortunately, and a scary thing is that we're also seeing it with brokers, where loads are getting double billed by the brokered carrier and then the subcontract carrier. So if the broker doesn't pay the subcontract carrier soon enough, they have all of that paperwork.
They're coming after you directly.
So they're coming directly for it when the agreement is with the broker. So in that case, you're going to have a different carrier with a different invoice number and probably different charges, because the brokers don't do this out of the goodness of their heart, right? So that makes it more complicated. So
what's causing this?
I wish I knew, right?
If you knew, you'd have a prevention method. Yeah.
But it also would probably put me out of business at the same time. So what we do now is we've built out, and actually we've got a new version of it where we're actually trying to introduce an AI component to it, where we're running about a 13 field algorithm that looks at different characteristics of the freight bills to determine, based on origin, destination, ship dates, weights, bill lading numbers, of course, pro numbers, carriers, some commodity information, things along that line. We're looking at different components of the invoice, and not just depending on the carrier and the pro number,
right?
To help reduce the opportunity for duplicates to get through our system and be paid twice by the client. So
now I imagine that would be something that, even if this duplication process wasn't happening, you guys would probably be going down to utilize AI within your resources. Did this just speed up the process, or was this probably as soon as you saw AI, you're probably like, hey, this could probably make our value add even better? What is that? Because AI is everywhere now. So how did that discovery go for you? Nolan Cunnings?
We were already kind of going down that path, right? Trying to look at ways to improve our systems. Our OCR process utilizes an AI component so that it knows what it's looking for and where it's looking for. I mean, the velocity that we can get invoices, from received in our system now is just incredible compared to where it used to be.
That's awesome.
But now, even with the duplicate process, with the GL coding process, we're able to train the system better to do things faster. And yeah, some of the recent technological advances have allowed us to do these things a little bit faster. It's given, our programmers, it's been kind of a blessing and a curse because now they're learning on the fly too, right? You know that you guys have a lot of developers there, right? So
Yes, we do.
so it's a blessing and a curse, and they curse me all the time for telling them to do all this stuff. So,
But that's the role, the develop. We will say it's easy, and someone back there will do it, and they will curse on the eighth cup of coffee that they've been up all night trying to figure out the 3-minute cell that we turned into a week of work for them.
My operations people hate when I go out and see customers or potential customers because the word no is not in my vocabulary. I'm like, hey, we'll make this work. And then I come back and I sit down with the general manager and says, I just promised that we could do this. And she looks at me, and I could use some colorful words here for some of the stuff she says to me, is like, how the blank are we supposed to do that? I'm like, that's your problem.
I love it because, my I get that face from my CTO a lot. I go, I haven't promised anything yet, but what if we did this? And he gives me his face. Now, in his defense, he doesn't always smile, so you can't really tell. And he's got a good stoic face, but I know that he loves when I come in the door.
That look, right?
Yeah, I do. But you know that you're doing something right when you're having those conversations. Hey, this is something new that I think is important. How can we do that? So, and I think that you guys are clearly having that conversation a lot with, whether it's the benchmarking and looking at against the industry, whether that's helping the RFP process or involving the buy integrations with ERPs and getting your data back into it so they can get that cost per product or per shipment from a real, here's what we were billed and paid, not just from a quoted perspective. Yep. So no, you guys, it all sounds great. And I would imagine that without what you're doing, the process would be very painstakingly frustrating without some of the tools that you offer.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there was a study that used to be conducted every year, and they do it every few years now, where they look at what it cost a company to process and pay a freight bill internally versus what it does if you outsource it to a company like us. And
looking at like the man hours and the priorities.
Man hours, yeah. Right. And that is if you can develop the in-house expertise to do it yourself. A regular, AP clerk doesn't know, about freight, right? Doesn't know about freight classes, doesn't know about fuel surcharges, doesn't know about, 4,000 different tariffs that are possible to price the shipment, right? So, but
and then if you go the other way around, you got the freight guy. He goes, "I'm not going to pay any of that. It's all BS."
Yeah, exactly. So, but the last time I saw that study is that it cost a company somewhere between $17 and $24 to pay an invoice internally.
Just each one. Yeah,
just one, and to subcontract it to somebody like us who's built our entire business around economy of scale and things along that line. We can do it for $1, right? So. Hey. That's a save right there, and it's one of those things. It's hard savings versus soft savings.
Yeah, that's always the fun one. But I know that because we have just a basic freight bill management tool that they're still doing it themselves, and even just getting the tool in front of them is. We have seen accounting teams high five after seeing a demo, and I have never seen a high five in a demo I've done before, because as exciting as I can be, it's still software on a screen, and It's not a roller coaster ride, and nobody gets free tickets to the Super Bowl, so you really don't generally see that kind of excitement. But it's always awesome when you can see that manual process start to get automated, and for your guys have some of these safeguards and these matching and these pieces that take out, hey, this is 30% of my day, just this one thing, and you're telling me I only have to spend 5% of my day on that. Okay, please, more of that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things that we do when we're sitting down with a customer, especially one that hasn't used an outside, processor before, is that, hey, we're not trying to take your job. We're trying to give you more time to do things that are more critical to running your business and not chasing all of these freight bills, right?
Right.
So would you rather cut one check a week or send one ACH a week, or would you rather have to book, 2,000 freight bills and send out, 30 checks, right? So that's kind of the way that we try to position it.
No, and that makes sense. So I love the breakdown here. And then, John, it's been amazing kind of just getting your insight on it, just from your perspective and also from Nolan and Cunnings. So I always like to leave an opportunity here. So I have this soapbox for all 5.5 people that listen and watch. And so here's where, do you have a message out to either the shipping industry, the carriers, or just anyone who might be listening from either John or from the Nolan and Cunnings perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's look, the time is now, right? I mean, it's every day that goes by, you're potentially letting dollars fall on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And we try to treat our customers' money like it's our money, right? And that's one thing that I try to instill in my people. The time is now. The if you're a shipper and you haven't looked at what you're spending and how you're spending it and what you're spending it with, or who you're spending it with, you have to do it now, because the carriers certainly aren't going to come and try to give money back to you.
They're not going to self-regulate.
They're not going to self-regulate. So you need a company like us to help you. And if nothing else, let us do that benchmarking exercise. Let us give you that peace of mind of how you're spending, right? And let's know if you're at market or not. And then if you're not, then let us help you get there, and let us help you. Let us help you with the technology that you need to better execute your shipments, so that you're staying in line with market. So it's really, the time is now. Don't wait. Don't let any more money fall on the floor. And it's really time to look at things.
Well, thank you very much, John. And you guys just heard it from John Vigliarolo, president of Nolan and Cunnings. If you're going to argue with a carrier, don't do it alone. Bring a friend. But yeah, thanks everybody for listening. I had a great time. It's been Patrick Scholas with another Banyan Technologies Tire Track podcast. And stay tuned for the next one they let me, until they find somebody prettier or with better hair. Thank you, guys. Bye, John.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.